So one of the affiliate parties, the National Super Alliance, the Wiper Democratic Movement Kenya, had a National Executive Council meeting, come parliamentary group meeting, where they resolved to support President Uhuru Kenyatta's Jubilee government and also support his agenda, the Big Four agenda part of it, in Parliament. Let's listen into what was said in that National Executive Council meeting that was covered by our senior political affairs reporter, Patrick Amemo.
For 3 hours, members of the Wiper Democratic Movement National Executive Council and Parliamentary Group brainstormed on the current political landscape after the March 9th handshake between President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga. Members saluted Uhuru and Raila for putting the interests of the country first and burying the political hatchet. Wiper said the political situation in the country has stabilized and led to the total closure of the election season.
We commit to work with President Uhuru Kenyatta in his fight against corruption, as well as his broad agenda of transforming this country under the Big Four agenda, which is part of Vision 2030. It is now the decision of NEC PG of the Wiper Democratic Movement Kenya to directly work with President Uhuru Kenyatta and his government.
Kama viongozi, ni jukumu letu tunaporudi mashinani, hata kwa county assemblies zetu, hata kwa executive zetu, kumuunga rais mkono kwa swala hili nyeti ambalo limerudisha Kenya nyuma, swala la corruption.
And the decision that we have arrived at is a result of full consultation.
Wiper now joins its counterpart in the National Super Alliance ODM in supporting Jubilee's development agenda. Two NASA affiliates, Ford Kenya and Amani National Congress, ANC, have not publicly declared their position on the government's development agenda. Concerns have been raised that minority parties move to support the government will kill opposition and remove checks and balances.
We were either going to form the government or be in the opposition. Now, as it has turned out, we're in the opposition. Our intention is to remain as opposition, but on those items that are for the benefit of mwananchi, tutaunga mkono kikamilifu bila hata kusita. Na pia ijulikane, it's always good to be at the negotiating table.
If there is an unfolding government of national unity in terms of people sitting at the table together, negotiating together, seeing that the future of our country is secure, it doesn't mean that within that framework, things that are wrong cannot be said they are wrong. Just like we are saying corruption is wrong, therefore it has to be corrected.
Kalonzo further asked Wetangula to stop sending conflicting messages on NASA.
Mheshimiwa Wetangula made it clear that he is in NASA to stay. So the position we have taken here as NEC speaks to that point, that we do have a valid coalition arrangement which is registered with the Registrar of Political Parties. I didn't hear Brother Raila think of anything different. And so when supporters at that level, I want to just ask all the coalition members not to encourage unnecessary fighting, because I know that Honorable Wetangula has moved on after he was removed from the position of the minority leader in the Senate. That is now part of our history, and he has moved on. So let's not encourage division. I will personally not accept a situation like that. I will work.
Kalonzo says he's also in the race to succeed Uhuru. Political pundits will be keenly watching to see whether Kalonzo's move will change the political landscape and cause more jitters in Jubilee wing, allied to William Ruto. Patrick Amemo, KTN News.
So this was, of course, in the Kenyan Constitution 2010, we have the minority and the majority party. But obviously, the role of the minority party as the people to check those in power does not change, does it? And do you think what the Wiper party are doing is just going with the flow of what's happening after the handshake? And what do you think about the opposition in Kenya?
Well, the 2010 Constitution gave us a presidential system, so that we have that majority and minority. And it's the expectation that the minority will always be opposing majority if there is a need to oppose them.
All right.
But in a parliamentary democracy like the one we've had for a long time, is that members of the opposition would be opposing the government of the day for just opposing. So whatever the government says, they jump up and oppose. But you remember when President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga were engaged in the handshake, the president later on at the National Assembly indicated that unity is not unanimity.
Yes.
So there's a very valid expectation that the minority, both in the Senate and the National Assembly, will stand up for the public interest. But when you look at the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka and his interest in Jubilee, it's got nothing to do with the voters in Ukambani who gave him a number of seats. It's about driving personal selfish interest. And there's a history to that. A few days before he made that pronouncement, the deputy president hosted a number of elected leaders from the Ukambani community. And as I see it, Kalonzo probably feels that he's going to be jilted very soon, and he needs to cover his bases. That's the reason why he said in that statement, he's going to be working with President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta in support of the Big Four agenda and corruption. He did not indicate that he's going to be working with Jubilee. So his statement is very careful that I'll be working with President Kenyatta. I don't care about the Deputy President Ruto, and will be supporting the Big Four agenda as if it's any big deal. And in my view, the entry of Wiper is actually immaterial. With or without his support, the Big Four agenda would go to fruition. With or without his support, President Kenyatta is not going to be nervous. So really, his statement there is John come lately. There are, you know, the bandwagon propaganda that Jubilee has been pushing, that if you're not part of this team, then you are out. That's the only reason why Kalonzo has joined the team. And it further reinforces the perception created.
So it's not genuine?
It's not genuine, it cannot be genuine. And it reinforces the perception created for a long time that is a watermelon. He's unable to take a position right from the word go. Strong leaders are expected to take a position, whether you are right, whether you are wrong. But for him, he's been sitting on a fence like President Kibaki before him and waiting to see the directions. When the waters are very calm, then he says, now I'm part of this handshake. And, you know, his contribution is not going to be material. I suspect wherever President Kenyatta is, when he saw that news conference, he must have, you know, broken into a dance and song and wondering what happened to Kalonzo. But really, Kalonzo's motivation is Ruto. Ruto a few days ago had a meeting with the legislators.
Right.
We don't know the outcome of that meeting, and Kalonzo is just behaving like a jilted lover.
All right. Mark, what do you think about this? And of course, moving this beyond Kalonzo Musyoka and Wiper, what does it say about the state of the Kenyan democracy? We know that minority can still support, you know, government and all that, but what does it say about keeping the government of the day in check?
If we were to just zone in on Kalonzo and Wetangula, you realize that these are drowning fellows who are clutching at straws. That's the only impact that they have. So on the global scale of Kenyan politics, their impact is quite minuscule, and they're looking for relevance. However, if we are to situate it broadly, it has to be understood that for a long time, opposition in this country was considered enmity. So basically, it was without rhyme or reason, you are always against what the government of the day was doing. However, we must commend the maturity on this particular issue, that we agree as a nation that we need universal health care because we all have people who cannot afford to go to hospitals and we would like them to get treated. We agree as a nation that we need affordable housing. Yeah. Why? Because for most of us, the mortgage rates in this country are just ridiculous. So we agree that if we are going to be a society worth living in, we need to build houses. And if we build these houses, we agree that we need to have jobs, and those jobs can only come through manufacturing. And this is the kind of thing that Wiper has agreed to, and that I commend them for, because this is the kind of politics we need to play. And I also commend them for one thing, that they have specified the areas within which they support the president. What is worrying and missing to me is the support for the fight against corruption. Many of the political parties have been extremely quiet about it. And for me, the Big Four is a bigger threat, the corruption is a bigger threat to this country than developing the Big Four. If we fought corruption, Big Four would happen automatically. So it is critical that even as we zone out of what what used to be very egregious politics.
Right.
Even as we begin to agree more and more, we need to start agreeing on the things that ail this country more and see, focus on fighting against corruption, focus on the fight against tribalism. Those are the kind of things that will actually transform this nation.
All right. Husband, from where you sit, do you think we are on the right path in terms of minority and majority in government, in terms of the so-called opposition? Is it dead?
Well, I think you're on the right path, because if you look at the spirit and the letter of the Constitution, it basically separates that power. That Parliament, as it is, both Senate and Parliament, are supposed to provide three key things: represent the people that voted for them, legislate, and oversight. So when you have political leaders from different formations come together and say we're going to work in the interest of the Big Four agenda, in the interest of how President Uhuru wants to run this country, it is quite refreshing, because then it means that whatever will happen in Parliament will be driven by ideology, the greater good of the greater majority, and not individual politicians. And that basically frees members of Parliament from whichever side of the political divide to stand on issues. Because if issues are going to benefit Mwananchi and issues are going to support President Uhuru Kenyatta's agenda, then if your political leaders have already said that they're going to support that, in Parliament you're definitely gonna take positions on issues that are likely to benefit Mwananchi. And then secondly, you also realize that it takes us away from these balkanizations of regions, that right now you can easily say that Governor Granton Samboja can easily work with any other leader from the national government without being reprimanded by Wiper Democratic Party, that, you know, you are a member of our party, we have a spirit. We look at what is happening in Migori, for instance, right now. The fact that there was handshake at the top has actually cascaded down to the bottom, where people are a lot more democratic. They're saying that, you know, it doesn't have to be ODM, because ODM is also working with the president, so we can work with any other person. And I think to that extent, it is pushing us to a very bright space of constructive, you know, relationship between the elected leaders and the central government. That I'm looking at a situation where MPs will now not look at leaders, but will focus on issues. And if leaders don't align themselves to issues that benefit Wananchi, then it goes without saying that these leaders will find themselves outside the framework of what Wananchi will be looking for leaders.
All right, Kipchumba, I know you subscribe to the school of thought that this country does not have an opposition because of the Constitution 2010, but some people seem to think that the reason why issues like the rhinos that have died, the sugar issue, the NYS too, so to speak, all these issues have not been dealt with in the best way possible, and this is because we don't have a working opposition. Do you agree?
Ben, it is difficult to disagree with that assertion, but there is also another part which must be brought in for us to look at the bigger picture. We must also check at the academic or other merits of our members of parliament. On the recent past, that has been brought out to be an issue. When you look at some of our members, when it comes to even constructive engagement at the committee level, some of them lack basic knowledge, which in terms affect the quality of their oversight responsibility. I think that is also a factor, even before we look at the parties coming together and doing whatever they have to do. Wiper coming to support Uhuru Kenyatta is a good thing, but politically it has zero value. Look at it this way. Jubilee has what we call tyranny of numbers. It has enough numbers to support whichever motion, but that is as far as politics is concerned. But as far as fostering a nation and patriotism and moving forward as one state of 42 or 44 nation tribes, that is a good direction we are taking. But there is something that we must remind Kalonzo in a louder voice, that one, NASA, the political coalition, died on 9th March, and the spirits departed from that vehicle. What remained is the skeleton deposited in the office of the registrar of political parties. He might hang to the skeleton, but NASA is dead. And the other reason is this: political coalitions are formed to win power. They are not formed to work with another government. No, they are formed for the basis that if we win power, this and this happen. If that does not happen, it goes some other things will go haywire. But the other thing, there is another person who must be commended for doing a good job. A week ago, Raphael Tuju gave a press conference after the National Management Committee of Jubilee. And the last paragraph of that communique was that he encouraged other political parties and he welcomed Wiper, Amani Coalition, and all this. This might be interpreted as efforts from that end.
Right.
We might not know where the efforts came from, but because he's the one who came out loudly and spoke about it, I commend him for doing that.
So away from what Wiper is trying to do or has been doing following that NEC meeting yesterday, there has been a lot happening inside the National Super Alliance, which is seen as the minority in Parliament. Let's listen into some of the things that have been said, especially ODM lawmakers hitting out at Ford Kenya and telling Ford Kenya members with positions in House committees and other things like that to resign from those positions because their leader said that NASA is dead. Listen.
And what I see of Senator Wetangula today is a person who is in the path where his emotions are getting destroyed by the day. Could we ask him to take a moment, relax, rest, even take some off from politics, go rest somewhere so that he can recover fully from the shock that is no longer the leader of the minority in the Senate of the Republic of Kenya.
Juzi nimeona ndoa kati ya Wetangula na Eugene Wamalwa. I want to state here categorically that a marriage between Wetangula and Eugene Wamalwa is synonymous to a marriage between two men which cannot bear children. Wanaume wawili hawezi zaa mtoto. So hiyo ni mapenzi ambayo sisi tunasema kwamba haitazaa chochote. It's cosmetic na haitaenda popote.
Those members from Ford Kenya, especially my deputy and going forward, if I don't get any letter in the next 48 hours disassociating themselves from the statements of their party leader, action will be taken. If we don't receive letters disassociating from the statement of their party leaders for Kenya, the ones who are holding offices, now the NASA leadership in Parliament will take action.
This must up away from the issue of the NASA affiliate parties breaking their legs as they try to join the government. Did NASA itself kill itself way even before all this? What's going to happen there? Because that is what Kenyans thought was going to check the government.
Well, allow me to make some two preliminary statements. Number one, Karori has indicated that the quality of our members of parliament at the National Assembly and the Senate is of questionable quality. And you can see that from the senator for Kakamega, the Honorable Malala. I mean, what kind of conversation is that is he holding on national TV? That is really unacceptable, and I think it's a bad manners to... I mean, we know when Raila shook hands with Kenyatta, it was a political marriage. You are not expecting babies. So what is he talking about Wetangula and Wamalwa expecting babies? That's really unacceptable. And I think he owes Kenyans an apology. That's number one. Then number two, part of the reason as to why the NASA coalition is on a rocky patch is the unacceptable behavior by ODM members of the National Assembly and Senate. Now you have the Honorable Mbadi and the Honorable Junet Mohamed behaving like bullies. It's as if the other coalition members are in Form 1 and these ones are in Form 4, and they're bullying everybody across the road. We know for a fact that in the coalition, ODM has got the biggest shareholding. But every shareholder in any company counts. If you go for an AGM, you may not be the majority shareholder, but you are supposed to be given an opportunity to speak. So for the Honorable Junet Mohamed to start giving people ultimatums, that in the next 24 hours or 48 hours, if I'm not in a receipt of communication from you, dissociating yourself from the Honorable Wetangula, I'm going to take action. That's not how you build a coalition. You're supposed to have negotiations. Let them go and have a meeting, have a cup of tea somewhere, maybe in Kakamega, Kayega, and then come up with resolutions. But doing a news conference at the National Assembly and giving ultimatums in a political party, it doesn't work. It reminds me of Kanu, when Kanu was Mama na Baba and somebody made a mistake. Right. That's when the chairman would come on board and give those issues. But now going back to NASA, anybody thinking that NASA is dead is actually thinking about 2022, because you have a coalition which is put together by instruments, and it's stated in black and white. And for Karuri, who is a lawyer, he needs to go and read those documents that NASA would die when 3 political parties, in writing, indicate their willingness to do a run.
All right, away from the technical terms, Mark, let me come to you. So Kalonzo insists that NASA is still alive. Mudavadi says the same. Wetangula says it's dead. ODM believe the NASA coalition is alive. But have you seen them come up with any policies as a coalition, apart from Big Four agenda, which is Jubilee policy?
To be honest with you, the NASA coalition is both dead and alive. And I will tell you why it's dead. It's dead because it's not functional. It is dead to the extent it is like a marriage where on the surface the husband and wife go to events together, but in the house they live in separate rooms. That's the NASA marriage as at now. It is alive by function of the law. It is alive.
So many marriage analogies today.
Yes, it is alive by the function. It is alive by the function that none of those political parties, Wetangula's included, is willing to pull away from the NASA coalition at this point in time. The implications of that are quite difficult to do. So it is dead and it is alive on paper. However, the journey that Wetangula is taking is a journey, in my mind, of futility. Because it is his hope that between him and Eugene, he will consolidate the missing Bukusu vote. Because we must understand that Ford Kenya is not as dominant as it was in Bukusu land. So he's trying to consolidate that, and from that have a springboard. However, he should be aware that he lost that the day Atuoli called him a coward after the events of January 30th. So it's not going to work. Junet Mohammed and the ODM...
That will always haunt him.
It will haunt him. Trust me, it will cost him. If he runs for Senate today, he most likely will lose that seat in Bungoma. Now, Junet Mohammed and the ilk of ODM leaders, the reason why they're able to back like that is because finally it has dawned on ODM that the popularity of Raila Odinga and the popularity of ODM as a party is far reaching as compared to Ford Kenya, as compared to Wiper, and as compared to the ANC. They have been the big boys carrying these Form 1 students on their back long enough. And therefore, I think ODM has woken up to the reality that they can actually have their cake and eat it too, as far as the political competition is concerned. Because, in a nutshell, if today NASA was to fall apart, and they were going to fight for those seats, ODM would have all the minority seats by virtue of their numbers. So it is a big favor that they gave those committee seats to their constituents.
That having been said, Hesbon, in 1 minute only, what is its net effect on NASA? Will it help Kenyans or their supporters in any way?
Well, I think, first of all, there is that understanding that whether NASA is dead or not is a good thing for all the players within NASA, because they now can use it politically. And to that extent, the net effect does not benefit the common mwananchi. It simply means that politicians will bandy words on the basis of what will suit them. When it suits them, they'll say that NASA is dead and buried. When it doesn't suit them, they'll say that we are in NASA to stay. And of course, I think Junet Mohammed and Badi did well, because Honorable Chris Wamalwa came out and said he's in NASA to stay, in which case, in the public domain, he actually was foreseeing the wrath of ODM and decided to dissociate himself from Honorable Wetangula. But again, the most important thing, I think, for me is to go back to the events of January 31st, that the moment Raila saw himself in, he actually made sure that he can do with NASA whatever he wants because he has the clout. Now, these other people, these are Johnny come-latelys. They can only do whatever they want to do after Raila has given the direction. For as long as Raila has not given direction on what NASA is, then people will keep speculating. And the fact that the speculation is safe if you say NASA is not dead because the instruments are still with the register of political parties, only those who will say NASA is dead will suffer the consequences, like Wetangula is suffering.
All right. Kipchumba, in 1 minute only, nothing more. Please have the final thoughts on this. Where does this leave the opposition, if you can call it that?
I think the opposition, as Hezbollah has aptly put it, remains Raila Odinga. The rest are just terminologies and names and color.
All right.
Let us be honest to each other. And for the high-octane lyrical sycophancy that I have just seen being oozed out there, it is danger for political democracy and growth of a coalition to have people behaving like the firstborn of the first wife who treats the kids from the other wives as nobodies. I think going forward, they ought to develop mutual respect for each other. They are all leaders. There's no need for name calling. But also, I think Wetangula should smell the coffee and see the shade, that the shade long time moved away from him. He should just, if he's man enough.
Right. But the fact that you say the opposition is Raila Odinga, and Raila Odinga is in a partnership with Uhuru Kenyatta.
So the rest, actually, that whole NASA outfit is Raila Odinga. Look at it from wherever you want to look at it. It is only that Mudavadi could not wake up in the morning and cross directly to ODM and walk there and walk with Raila Odinga from there. The same with Kalonzo Musyoka and all this. But the truth of the matter, the gist is, that thing is Raila Odinga. If Raila Odinga is working with Uhuru Kenyatta, the rest have no business. They either join Raila Odinga or be carried by the tsunami, as always talked about.
All right. Let's leave it there. Keep this conversation going on social media. Use the hashtag KTN Sunday Edition. Tell us what you think. Do you think the opposition in Kenya is dead or alive? Or is it effective in any way? What does it mean? What's happening? The wrangles inside the coalition and the partnership being occasioned by that now very famous handshake. Tell us what you think on our social media platforms. Let's take a quick commercial break here on Sunday Edition. When we come back, we'll speak of that looming cabinet reshuffle, where we understand from our sources up to 4 cabinet secretaries could be fired. Don't go too far.
We have got options on the table. Wale watu mashuhuri kwanza wanatakana kuongoza na mfano. Natarajia kuanzia kesho ama kesho kutwa nione wamepanga line hapa wanaleta title deeds. Na kusema kwamba tumeona hii mahali ni sio mahali ya kulima, sio mahali pa kuishi, tunarudisha nini? Title deeds. Yeah, because we have to cooperate in this thing. Lazima tushirikiane. Na hakuna maarufu kwa mambo ya kwenda kuingia kwa mali kama hiyo alafu nasema wewe ni maarufu gani? Yeah. So wale watu ambao kuna title deeds, wale ambao wanajulikana, wengine wanasikia ni rumors, wengine wanasikia ni nini. Yeah, so we want to, and in any case, kama watu walipewa shamba legitimately, si mtu atajieleza alipewa namna gani? Yeah, maana hakuna shamba inapewana kwa giza. Utasema it was declared, mimi nika apply, tukafanya balloting, nikapata.
This is KTN News.